Good day! This video is just a continuation of the previous lesson I discussed to you. So in today's lesson, you will learn about the other component of communicative competence, which is the strategic competence. So what is meant by strategic competence? So strategic competence is the ability to recognize and repair communication breakdowns before, during, or after they occur. So you must be able to find strategies on how you are going to avoid communication breakdown. And if it's already happening, how are you going to solve that and restore communication? And what you are going to do after the communication breakdown occurs. So if you happen to solve issues like this, we can say that you achieve strategic competence. Now to achieve that, we have here some of the communicative strategies that you may use. First is nomination. So before a discussion starts, the topic must be identified or nominated first, because this will allow the listeners or audience to tune in to the topic. So it will also make the audience recall background information they have about the topic, prepare them to listen, and will also give them an idea what is going to be discussed. So here are forms of expressions that you may use for nomination. So we have, let's talk about, for example, English grammar. Another example, I would like to talk about biology. Today, I am going to discuss about subject and verb agreement, so something like that. Next is the turn taking. So it occurs in a conversation when one person listens while the other person speaks and vice versa. So speakers must know when to take turn or allow others to speak. So this means one speaker should not take too much time in speaking. He or she must provide opportunity for others to speak. So we have here an illustration on how the turn taking is done. So first, we will take turns. It is my turn to speak. Now I have to wait and listen to you. Next, it's your turn to speak. So that's how turn taking is done. Next is the restriction, which means limitation or limiting condition. So a speaker must restrict the topic of discussion. So the restriction is determined and limited by the amount of time given to a speaker. So since the time is limited, the speaker must make it clear to the audience what he or she wants to discuss or convey. For example, a broad topic may require more than an hour to discuss, but a topic that is properly restricted would have enough time for discussion and even questions. Next is the topic control, which means the speaker should focus on the topic without straying into other discussions. In other words, do not insert a topic that is not related to the topic you are discussing. For example, the topic that you are discussing is about parts of plants, but then suddenly you talk about your personal experience with your friend who cheated on you 5 years ago. So this one has nothing to do with the topic. So you must avoid doing this. You have to stick or focus to the topic you are discussing. Next is the topic shifting, which means changing from one topic to another. So when changing from one topic to another, the speaker should prepare the audience or listeners for the change. So you have to inform your audience or listeners. So the change must be done smoothly because listeners who are not yet ready for a shift in topic may develop different reactions. So let's relate that when you are watching your favorite anime, then someone interrupts and you immediately change the channel. So what would be your reaction? Of course, you will get mad or annoyed. So same thing when someone is delivering a speech. When you shift a topic, you must done it smoothly. Next is the repair. It refers how speakers address problems in speaking, listening, and comprehending that they may encounter in conversation. So if there is a problem in understanding the conversation, speakers will always try to address and correct it. For example, the speaker mispronounced a word. So in that case, he or she must restate what he or she already said to clarify the misunderstanding and avoid communication breakdown. I have also here some of the expressions we may use for repair. So what I mean is, let me rephrase that. In other words, let me say that again. So those are common form of expressions when you are using the repairing one. Next, we have the termination, which pertains to how you will end the conversation properly. So if you will note, if you will not terminate the discussion properly, the listeners will be left wondering what happened to the discussion and will not understand whether the topic was fully discussed or not. So one way to terminate a speech or discussion is to restate the main idea of the speech in a way that is memorable to the listener. So you can give a quote, a Bible verse, a famous saying, and etc. Another is to give the summary of the discussion. So I have here some of the common expressions that you may use for termination. So we have, let me end by saying, in conclusion, in summary, and we were able to discuss. So those are forms of expressions that you may use. Next, when you ask someone for clarification, you are asking them to say something in a different way or provide more information so that you can understand them better. So you have to remember that it would be impolite to ask someone to clarify what he or she said by simple what? If the speaker is someone of higher rank, even if we know the person for a long time, we can only use that perhaps if we are asking for clarifications between our close friends. So we have here a table showing different expressions used for asking clarification. Asking what is informal, so how to ask that in a formal manner. So you can ask this way, may I request you to repeat what you said? Next, can you say that again? That is informal, so to make it formal, you can ask this way. Could you please say that again? Next, asking this, pardon, that is informal, so you can say that using formal. I'm sorry, something like that. Another examples of informal questions are, what did you just say? Say again, so something like that. Next is the repetition. So here a speaker may repeat what he or she said if he or she feels that the listener did not understand fully what was said. So for example, you are discussing about grammar and one of the listeners didn't understand it. So you as a speaker, you must repeat that to avoid communication breakdown. And also you have to remember that sometimes the speaker needs to repeat what he or she says to help individuals learn and retain key messages. A message delivered only once doesn't always hit its intended target. So if someone is listening only superficially or is distracted in any way, they can miss the key point of a message. So repetition will help avoid that. Next is rephrasing, which involves repeating the same message using different words or expressions. So here, you will rephrase. Example, the original statement is, symptoms of influenza include fever and nasal congestion. So you have to paraphrase that this way. A stuffy nose and elevated temperature are signs you may have the flu. So doing this, it can be easily understood by your audience or listener. Next is using nonverbal communication, which pertains to communication without using words. So example of this are the gestures, the body language, the visual expression, and so on. So this can be also used to prevent communication breakdown. So for example, if a person speaks his native language, which is English, and happens to talk with a Filipino who is not proficient in English, this Filipino who can understand him can use non-verbal language to communicate with that person. Thus, it will somehow prevent communication breakdown. Next is building on what others have said. So a speaker can express his or her ideas well by using words, phrases, or ideas that have been previously stated by other participants in the discussion. So this thing will create a connection between the speaker and listener because the speaker affirms what others have already spoken, giving them a sense of importance. For example, when the audience says, "What lacks us is our self-discipline." So the speaker can build what the audience says by saying, "I agree with the statement you have mentioned. What really lacks us is our self-discipline." So as we have seen in this time of pandemic, instead of staying home, others are still out there for no valid reasons. They drink with their friends, play outside wearing no face mask and face shield, and so on. So that's one of the many examples that you may use as a pattern on how to build on what others have said.